I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 168, Feeling Limitless with Jaime. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. I'm going to teach you how to get out of your diet brain so that you too can be naturally thin for life. No counting, restricting, or obsessing. I am going to take the mystery out of it for you so that you can become naturally thin starting today. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm so excited to share a conversation that I had with Jaime. So Jaime is someone who is going to share her story, and there's so much wisdom in there for you to hear, but she shares how she was really feeling defeated and frustrated, and she was so used to counting calories and tracking calories for so much of her life, and how everything changed for her in how she sees her body, in her weight, in how she actually weighs less now, not counting a single calorie than she used to when she was calorie counting and tracking her calories every day. And she shares how she was really afraid to try something new. She was afraid to join the Naturally Thin for Life program. And she shares with you really tactically what she did with those fears so that if that's you too, you can use what she shares to apply that to your life and your own journey. And she ends our conversation by talking about how limitless she feels, how so much of her life and what's possible for her life has kind of opened up in a completely brand new way because of how she uses her mind so differently than she used to, and how the tools inside of Naturally Thin for Life have allowed her to really see the own limitations she has set for herself and for her life, and to be able to break through those and compound the vibrance and aliveness and joy that she experiences now, and how excited she is to continue to live that way for the rest of her life, and how exciting it is for her to imagine what is yet to come. So I can't wait for you to dive into this week's podcast episode to hear how she worked through that doubt, how she worked through that fear, and what is available to her now on the other side because she was willing to go through that and really uncover what was in between her and not only just her naturally thin weight, but her naturally thin mindset that is now going to allow her to create anything that she wants in her life. So dive in, friends, and enjoy. All right, friends. Today on the podcast, I have Jaime with me, and I'm so excited to hear more about your journey, hear more about your story. So I will just kind of kick it off to you right away. And why don't you just share as much or as little about kind of your journey in losing weight with your body and kind of just what that's been like for you?
Yeah. So I want to start way back in time when I was a kid and how things kind of all started for me in terms of my weight and my body image. So around third or fourth grade is when I first started to notice my size relative to other kids, and the fact that I was bigger, and I was teased in school for being overweight or fat. So even at that age, I kind of took on the label or identity of like the fat kid. And that continued with me for many years through late elementary school, middle school, and into high school. But in high school, I grew a few more inches, as a lot of us do. And I also got really into sports. So I was a swimmer and a water polo player, and I started going to the gym. And so athletics and exercise became really important to me and helped me become leaner in high school. So I think both the height and the exercise kind of changed my body composition at that time. And so I also internalized. So not only did I have this identity that I was overweight or fat or not thin, thin was never a thing, but also in high school, it was like exercise was the way to be. thinner or to be lean or athletic. An athletic build is how I would have always like described my body. And then in college was when I would say that I first became really intentional about dieting. It was freshman year, late freshman year of college. I discovered calorie counting. I don't know where I got it, probably a magazine or a book or like some internet blog. And I took to it so naturally because I am also at my core a huge nerd and I love math. And it was like numbers and it was all right there, right? I remember having this little black 3-ring binder and I put all these pages in it. And the time I would write out all of my everything I ate, all the calories, and then all my exercise and the calories I burned. And at the time, I was trying to stick to 1,200 because, again, you get that number from somewhere and you're like, okay, 1,200 calories, that's what I have to eat. And then I burn off some. And I, as you can imagine, lost like 5 to 10 pounds at the time. And I was ecstatic. Like, this was like such a new concept. And look how quote unquote easy it was. But as you will probably relate, and I think you've talked about before, calorie counting is not that easy. And even though the rules are simple, like it's simple but not easy, and the rules are simple, but you're constantly looking for ways to maximize what you can eat. Like almost not break the rules necessarily, because your rule is I got to eat a certain amount of calories, but it's like how much food can I eat for that amount of calories? So I remember drinking like Slim Fast drinks and Snackwell's cookies. Like, oh, I can eat 6 Snackwell's cookies, or I could have like one regular cookie. But why would I want to just eat one regular cookie when I could eat 6 cookies that taste like chocolate cardboard, but still it's 6 cookies? And that kind of like mental game that you get into with the calorie counting. And it's funny because when I think back to that time when I decided, okay, I'm going to do calorie counting and I'm going to lose 5 or 10 pounds. I was only a few pounds more than I am now, which we'll get to. But I basically used calorie counting for the last like 15 plus years. That was my go-to method. I had other friends that were doing Weight Watchers, and there was all these other diets like low carb, South Beach, whatever, right? All the things. But calorie counting for me, again, it just came back to that quote unquote simplicity of it. Like it's just calories in, calories out. And if you can balance that equation, if you can stick to it, then you're good. But the problem was always sticking to it, which is all about willpower. And you're far enough along like I am, you've totally done away with calorie counting and willpower. But anyway, a couple of years ago, now it's been probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was a year postpartum with my second child, my daughter, and I had lost the initial baby weight, but I wanted to lose a little bit more. And I thought, okay, I got to get serious about this. This isn't just coming off with like breastfeeding and walking and like the normal stuff. I need to do something. I had seen all these ads for Noom, and I didn't want to go back to my traditional calorie counting. I thought Noom was it touted itself as a behavior based, mental based way of like kind of revamping your lifestyle in order to lose weight. And I thought, this is great. This is not pure calorie counting. I need something that goes deeper than that, that's different, that's not just carbs or keto or calorie counting. I want something more. And I thought Noom was it at the time. But what do you do in Noom like the first or second week? You set up a food diary where you track all your food and your calories, and they have green, yellow, red food, which they claim is not about what foods are bad or good, but how can you not think that foods are bad or good when it's red, yellow, green? What am I supposed to think? So it's, anyway, for anyone that's done Noom, you know what I'm talking about. But I did Noom for a year or so, and I lost the weight that I wanted to lose. And I thought I was at my what I would now consider my naturally thin weight, or call my naturally thin weight. I wasn't, but I didn't know that at the time. So, but I thought I was good. And about 2 years ago, I discovered your podcast. It was a Facebook or Instagram ad, social media of some sort. I found your podcast and I started listening to it, but I was already at the weight I thought I wanted to be at. So I would listen and I loved everything you said. And I thought, this is great, but I don't really have any weight to lose. So I thought about signing up, but I was like, I was at that place in my life. It just wasn't the right time because I don't think if I had signed up at that time that I would have gotten as much out of it as I did this time having signed up. But anyway, I was at the weight I was at after Noom. And last year I got a big job opportunity and I moved my family across the country, and the stress of moving and the new job and everything that came with that, I put on almost 20 pounds in like 3 months. And I thought, okay, I am either going to stay at this weight, like I am so done. I'm either going to stay right where I'm at and just forget it, like learn to love this body, or I need to try something that has nothing to do with calorie counting. Like I don't want to write down a single calorie more to lose weight. Like I'm just done. I was so done at that time. And obviously I'd been a big fan of yours, and I thought like I'm either going to try Laura's way or I'm just done.
Mm.
And I of course joined at that time. This was last September, so I think over 5 months ago now. And I am so happy I did. And then I'm talking to you here now, kind of 5 months later, and it has been just so wonderful and so much different than anything else I've tried.
I'm so curious for you. In the beginning, when you find calories, at least for those of us that I'm like at my core also a super nerd, and like it's almost like a little fun. Like you almost feel like you finally found it. At least that's how I felt. I was like, oh, there's this solution, and it's just math. And like I'm really good at math, and I can do math, and I can play this game. And you're like having all these mind games all the time about like how can I make the most out of it? How long can I push my hunger so I can, eat more later in the evening when I'm like not at work or however you're playing the game, right? But what does it turn into for you? Because it like almost, I don't want to say it starts out fun, but I felt a little like excited about it, or like it had a little sense of fun in the beginning, but it does start to like take a turn where you start to feel like almost like controlled by it. So I'm just curious, what was that like for you? And what is it like for you now not thinking about calories?
Yeah. So, like you said, you're always trying to get away with something or eat more than your calorie budget allows somehow. And for me, I agree. It was always fun, or I always had that willpower, that motivation. Like the first couple weeks was like, yeah, I got this. I'm going to do this again or do this for the first time. But then it becomes almost impossible to maintain because, at least for me, there were always days, and over time it became progressively more and more days where I would exceed my calorie count, or you have like a really big breakfast and then you're like, well, screw it. My whole day is ruined. I just ate 1,000 calories for breakfast because I went out to brunch or whatever and had the pancakes. Let's just go bananas, right? So it was very day based, and every day you start the morning, you're like, okay, today's gonna be the day I'm gonna eat only 1,200 calories. I'm gonna drink the green smoothie and drink water, and that's it. And that doesn't work. Or you inevitably do something outside of that because your brain doesn't want to. It's this construct that yes, you have chosen for yourself, but it still feels like someone else's plan the whole time. So you're like, someone else told me I should eat 1,200 calories, and someone else told me I should do this or that. And so it just feels like I'm constantly bumping up against that. And as soon as you break your calories, it's like I felt always defeated. I was always wrong. I could never win. Every day I exceeded my calorie count toward the end whenever and then I would start to just give up because every day I wasn't eating 1,200 calories. I was eating 1,600, 2,000, whatever. So you just always feel like a failure. And then it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy where of course you're going to fail if you always feel like a failure. And then eventually you just say, screw it. And you just gain if you lost the 5, 10 pounds, you just gain it all back because you just throw that whole thing out. In my mind or my opinion, it is not sustainable. And I didn't want to calorie count for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be so I eventually moved from pen and paper in my early 20s to my Fitness Pal and apps that can track calories. And I didn't want to be entering my calories on my phone every day 5 or 6 times a day, because that's how many times a day I was eating, and have my daughter see that and have other people see that. And that wasn't the way of life for me. Like when I thought about it, am I going to be doing this when I'm in my 60s, 70s? Like I'm still going to be calorie counting and worrying about like how many calories is in this and looking at, I just didn't see it as a long term, like long term rest of my life
Yeah.
thing. And if I couldn't do it for the rest of my life, I'm at the point now where I'm not going to do it. If the changes I'm making are not sustainable, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's like the lose-lose part of it is like if you don't stay to the set calories or whatever protocol you're following, right? If for someone else it's keto or counting macros or whatever, if you don't stick to exactly what you're supposed to, you internalize that like defeat and you feel like a failure. And then you're like, okay, well, and then if I do stick to it, you're like, great. So this is what I get to live with forever. And it's not freeing and it's not peaceful and it's not all the things we want. So it's like you pigeonhole ourselves into like just a complete lose-lose, in my opinion as well. I'm curious for you, when you got to that point, because I think a lot of people get to this point where they're like, listen, I've tried so many things. I'm so fed up. I'm so frustrated. I like can't do these things that maybe worked for me short term before. But there's also a part of them that doesn't want to kind of call it quits, but they're like kind of afraid to try something else. And so it's almost like, do I throw in the towel or do I do something completely different? What was it for you that had you believe that it was possible for you?
So I think I hit sort of rock bottom, which I don't recommend that people get to that point before trying your program. But for me, like I had said earlier, it was either I'm doing this different thing or I'm not going to try anything. But I knew in my heart that doing nothing was also not a good option or not the option that I wanted to exercise because I didn't feel good. I felt like I had extra weight on my body. I felt less energized. I just knew there could be a better way. And I think that small sliver of hope is what, and in my mind, I'm like, either this is it, like Laura's program and Naturally Thin for Life is the answer and it's going to be amazing and I'm going to blow my own mind and all my dreams will come true. Or I'm right where I'm exactly where I am, which is where I started and I'm still at the weight I don't want to be at and I still have low energy and all the things I don't want. But I was going to take that chance. And you mentioned being afraid. So I realized really after starting the program, although if I'd been introspective enough before, I would have realized it before, but I had so much fear at the beginning. And it wasn't until I started doing the thought and feeling work that you teach that I really uncovered that fear. So I wasn't as introspective as I could have been before, but I've been learning and teaching myself how to do that. But what I did is I wrote down all of my fears. I kept a running list in the workbook that you give out with the program. There was a page in the beginning. I don't think you ever had an exercise specifically on fear, but at the beginning, I just picked like a page with a lot of blank space. And I'm like, here are my fears. And I would just add to them every time another one came up in my brain. I would just keep adding. And eventually I had like 15 listed. Like, I have a fear that this won't work. That's a big one. I had a fear of food. I had a fear of not counting calories. I had a fear that it would work, but then it would all come back and it wouldn't be permanent. Like, I was afraid of everything, basically, both success and failure, and not doing what I had done before, but afraid of the new stuff because who knows if this is going to work. But at the end of the day, it was like, I committed to myself, I'm going to do this for 90 days because that's how long your workbook is. So I'm going to go all in for 90 days. I'm going to give it a shot. And again, if it doesn't work, I'm right where I started. So it seemed like I might as well try. And again, it was like that small sliver of like, you already have where you're at now, so you might as well try.
Yeah, that's so good. And that it just makes me think that is so important for me to help people see is just even just that little sliver of it being possible, right? Because most people don't listen to this podcast or join Naturally Thin for Life when they've never tried anything before, right? Most people are like, oh, this is the first thing I'm going to try. is understanding my thoughts and my feelings. And like, right, that's not usually where people enter their journey. There is so much fear. There's just so much fear. And so I want to normalize some of that too for people. And I've been thinking about ways to help people see that. And so I'm so glad you shared that, because when we're dieting and when we're just living our life day to day around other people, there's so much fear, like prevalent. And like fear, it's so easy for the fear in our own brain to get activated. And when you've spent years or decades fearing food, fearing your hunger, because we've made it mean that it's not going to allow us to get to the weight that we want. Like there just is inevitably so much fear. And it's like being able to have enough of that possibility, enough of that belief that maybe I'm not totally sure it's going to work, but like it could work for me. And like growing that possibility until it becomes more and more and more possible and then eventually inevitable. And so I'm curious for you, what shifted for you as you started to go through the program where it went from a lot of that fear to like, this could be possible for me, to it is possible for me, to now it's just my reality?
Yeah. So in the beginning, and part of the reason that I wrote down all my fears, and it was a way for me to acknowledge that part of me and tell myself it's okay to have these fears. It's also okay to believe that it's possible. So you can hold two contradictory beliefs at the exact same time, right? You can be afraid to try this, and you can also think this will work or could work, or using some of those latter thoughts as we talked about in the program. But I think that over time, and especially as you see the results, not just physically and in weight loss, but also mentally and emotionally and so many other results, the fears are replaced with the actual proof that you can do this. So I think you just get more and more data to the contrary. So if I'm afraid that this won't work, and then over weeks and months, I'm like, this is working, this did work. I think that more and more, slowly that fear gets pushed out because my thoughts have now been consumed and overridden by the positive thought, or the thought that this will work. So I think it's just that gradual shift. But in the beginning, I didn't try to make the fear go away. I didn't try to push it down or say, "Oh, well, you can't be afraid," and I got to be all in on this, and I got to just like convince myself this is going to work. I was like, this may not work, and that's a valid fear, and it's okay to have that, and I'm going to write it down and acknowledge it, and I'm still going to do the program, and I'm still going to see where it takes me.
And then you said something earlier about finding what your real naturally thin weight is, or what you know it to be now. What has that been like for you? And kind of how do you know when you're in the realm of your naturally thin weight compared to maybe what your experience was like before?
So my experience before, like let's say when I got to my lowest weight with Noom, which is about 6 pounds more than I am now, which I thought was my naturally thin weight, it still felt like a struggle. I still had a lot of fear lurking that like I couldn't maintain it, or that I had to maintain it. Like I've got to be doing things to maintain it, right? Because we're taught you lose the weight and then you go into maintenance mode, which you've talked about. So it felt like, oh, I'm in maintenance mode and I'm going to be in maintenance mode for the rest of my life. And I didn't really know, you don't really get a lot of support in that mode because so much of the focus is on losing the weight. And then when you get there, you're like, well, now what? Now I just got to be afraid of eating chocolate cake for the rest of my life. And and then I would vacillate between counting calories and not. So it was kind of that in and out. There was still a little bit of like that yo-yoing where you kind of gain a few pounds around the holidays and you lose it. And now I know that I am at my naturally thin weight because it is effortless. Like I am so full of joy. I don't even think about chocolate cake. Like it's not even it doesn't matter. Like the chocolate cake doesn't matter. Whereas before it was like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to do that. It felt like you're being deprived, and I don't feel deprived at all. And I am totally in control of that. And if I wanted to have the chocolate cake, I could. And if I don't, which I generally don't. But it's so much calmer and freer. And it's totally mental. You asked about naturally thin weight. It's almost a naturally thin mindset. The weight is the outcome or one of the outcomes, but you will know it when you. All I can say is I know it now that I'm in it, but I questioned it all along the way. Like, I thought my naturally thin weight was 5 to 10 pounds ago, and it's not.
It makes my heart so warm because it's just what I want for everyone to be able to experience is that like true freedom, that true joy of just feeling so good because it's not about the cake. Like, right? You can eat it, you cannot eat it, but like the freedom and the joy just comes when you feel so good in your body. And you just get to walk around with a physical lightness of having less weight. But you're right. It is just the byproduct of that mental lightness that comes when you think about your body in this way. And so for someone that's listening and thinking like, okay, that seems crazy that you could go from from being on Noom, tracking your calories to weighing less now, not tracking your calories. Like, but how? Like, how would you answer that?
This process, this thought work program that you have put together is phenomenal. So I knew that the answer, even when I was counting calories, I knew the answer had to be mental because if it was as simple as counting calories, if everyone could lose the weight and it was that simple, we would all weigh whatever we wanted. It's just math. And you just eat that. Like, that's what I would tell myself all the time. Jaime, why can't you get a grip and just eat the carrots and eat the, like, why are you eating the cake and not the carrots and not sticking to, right? It's mental. We are playing mind games with ourselves and rebelling and feeling restricted. So that's what drew me to this program. And it's that mental work that has been the key. And I say mental because that's where I started, but it's emotional. It's the mental, emotional, like that part of the equation. When you're counting calories, you have the rules and then you're trying to take action against the rules for the results, right? And that's the willpower. It's the circumstance and then you're going straight to action. And like my circumstance is whatever, I ate the cake, and then you're like the action is, well, I'm going to like grit and grind and try not to eat, I'm going to eat carrots for the rest of the day or whatever. But that fundamentally, for anyone who's tried it, fundamentally does not work long term. At least it didn't for me. And
Yeah.
I knew that it had to be something in my brain or something in my emotions, which I know now. And it totally was. Like unlocking that has blown the whole thing wide open. Like it's a total game changer. It's not even, it's hard to describe it to someone who isn't in my shoes. But if you're in the beginning or on the other side and you're counting calories, it's just like throw all that away.
Yeah. And I think so many people sometimes have a fear. I don't know if you ever had this fear too, but like another fear was like, well, but if I stop counting calories, then I'm just gonna like my fear used to be like, then I'm just gonna balloon up and I'm just gonna be like way bigger than I ever want to be. And it's so fascinating to see how your motivating factor has to be wanting to feel incredible in your body. And the more and more you want to feel incredible in your body, right? And you have the thought work and the feeling work tools to go along with it, you can blow your own mind at the ease and the freedom that's on the other side of that. So I'm curious for you too, when you said you moved across the country, you had a new job. So when you were going through this program and you had just moved and you were maybe feeling a little more stressed out, how did you make time for it? Like, how did you make time for it? What was your experience like in it? And did you notice any difference in your stress?
So I intentionally decided, so I joined the program at the end of September, which is obviously right before the holidays and the end of the year craziness. I intentionally decided to start then as opposed to waiting until January or February, which I know now we're here in March, but I wanted to start at a time when it wasn't quote unquote the perfect time. Like I had just finished moving, like we moved in August. So this was like a month after. So we still had we were still getting organized. I was still learning my job. I travel a lot for work, and we were going to the holidays. But I intentionally picked a time that kind of would be stressful, would put it to the test. And maybe this was part of the psychology at the time, but I was like, if I can make this work now, I can make it work anytime. Right. I didn't want to wait until like the perfect time, A, because the perfect time never comes, but B, because then I would wonder, oh, well, it's only because I had nothing, I had less going on. And so I was able to devote all this time to this program. So I did not need a lot of time. This program doesn't take a lot of time in the beginning. When you're watching the videos, it's maybe 30 minutes a day, and you could even dole that out in smaller increments. Some days I skipped the videos, and I didn't always do all the exercises that you have in the workbook, but I did the ones that I felt were core to what I needed, the tools that I needed to do. So things like the buckets in the morning and some of the feelings, and sometimes I do a brain dump, but I could tell when I what kind of structure I needed. And I think everybody's different in terms of that. Some people might want to do every single tool every single day and spend more than 5 to 10 minutes on it. And other people, I think 5 to 10 minutes, like max. I mean, now I think in the beginning, maybe it's up to half an hour a day, but like now I'm still doing my buckets now, which is like less than 5 minutes a day. And
Yeah.
that's really it. The program part is so minimal, especially if you're used to counting calories, where I spent way more time looking up some random thing I ate in MyFitnessPal, and you're like, well, that's not it. And I need a cup and not a half a cup because it only has this increment. And then you're like, you made a recipe. So then you got to put in like a tablespoon of butter and like the exact thing.
Yeah.
It's just that will drive you crazy, right? This program
Yes.
is like the opposite of that. So everything you do, all the tools are all for your mental wellness. It is like you asked about stress. It is like the opposite of stressful. It is to make you less stressed. Calorie counting to me was stressful. This is not stressful.
Yeah. Do you ever think about what it will be like for your daughter to see you like this versus counting calories?
Yes, I think it will be a much better relationship, both between us, but also hopefully I can pass on some of what I've learned to her and her relationship, not just with food, but with her body, which I think is possibly even a more important piece of this because I have spent so much of my life, frankly, hating so much of my body and myself. And I don't want her to be saddled with that baggage. And I think food and exercise and mental well-being and everything that's wrapped up in that and body image, I'm hoping that the way that I portray myself now and the way I conduct myself, and she can grow up in that environment and hopefully find more peace that way.
Yeah. I think about that too for my daughter. And right, there's a part of maybe all moms, but at least my brain is like, I want to protect them from all the things. So they never have to struggle ever. And she's only 3. And so obviously she'll grow up with our experience together. And I've even thought, even if she does struggle, and she might have some struggle in her relationship with food, she might have some struggle in her relationship with her body, but she will have spent the majority of her experience and her childhood knowing that it's possible that that struggle doesn't need to be there. And I feel like that even just that underlying experience for our kids and for anyone that we come in contact to, that they can see that there is another way and then it doesn't have to be that way, to drive them to find whatever solution they want or they need for their own experience in their life, but to know that it doesn't have to be that way. And so I just love imagining, right, everyone that we get to come into contact to, whether or not that's our kids or other people and other relationships we have, that they can just see that there is another way, that it just doesn't have to be as torturous as we make it. And so you said something about body image, and I know you shared something with me inside of the program about how you see your own body has changed. And so can you share a little bit more about what that's been like for you? Because It's the oddest phenomenon that I've ever experienced. Not maybe the oddest one ever, but it's an odd experience when I used to wake up in the morning and if I felt like I followed my rule the previous day and like I was feeling good in my body, I swear the mirror would show me a thinner version. And then I would wake up the next day and I would be like, I would have maybe binged the night before. I just wouldn't be feeling as great in my body or I didn't follow the diet rules. And I swear the reflection showed me 30 extra pounds. And it was like the craziest mind trip for me to see my own reflection. And so I'm curious what it's been like for you maybe before and what it's like for you now.
So I'm going to compare it to when I was at my quote unquote lowest weight, or what I thought was my naturally thin weight before, where I was always in fear of gaining the weight back and this wasn't permanent. How do I maintain this? I frankly could not see my body, I think, clearly because I was so consumed with that mental chatter about how it was just self deprecating across the board, much less against my own body. I still didn't feel comfortable where I was at. Like this was so fragile and anything could perturb it, right? Like a move across the country or the holidays or go on vacation and gain 5 pounds. Like it was so fragile that anything could perturb it. And I think that also, I internalized that for my body as well. Like I just couldn't, things were not right. I didn't sit well. And so I never really loved my body. I still was very self critical. I still think I saw myself as bigger than I was, or was because when you're constantly worried about gaining it back, part of your brain is in that scenario, in that possible future state where you gain it back. And I could see that reflected kind of in my own self image and my own body image. But now that I am not worried about gaining it back, and I know this is a permanent change, it wasn't until a couple of months ago where it really hit me that, oh my gosh, like not only is this permanent, but it kind of almost hit me like a ton of bricks that I am this small. Like this is my body. Like because you're also it's interesting because I've also been going through like nothing in my closet fits, which is probably the hardest part of this whole thing. Which a lot of people will be like, I would love to buy a whole new wardrobe. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's actually really hard when nothing fits. But it was a couple of months ago where I put on something that's frankly baggy, like does not look good. And I didn't even notice it. Like you don't even notice. You're so used to wearing these clothes, and as you're losing weight, you kind of wear the same clothes. And I put on a suit or whatever that I had always worn at my heavier weights or even a few pounds ago or whatever. And I thought it was fine. And my husband's like, wow, that jacket looks really baggy on you. I stopped and looked in the mirror again. He's like, I'm like, he's right. This is totally ridiculous. I'm like swimming in this thing. It's like you cannot see it. Sometimes it takes someone else commenting on it to really see it. And from that point on, I have noticed how big all my clothes are. Like it was like night and day. I can't believe I couldn't see that or feel that. And I think it's because of that, having that one foot in alternate reality. And now I am fully like, this is my reality. And my future is I am naturally thin for life. Like this is like 100% the rest of my life could do this.
Yeah. It is such a mind trip. And that's why I think right everyone needs these tools to be able to kind of get their mind on board with the other side. Like it's hard to describe a little bit when you haven't experienced it, but I remember having similar experiences of buying clothes in a certain size and be almost like I still didn't believe it. Like it was so tangible, right? Like you're saying, like sitting there, seeing room in a jacket, but it's like your brain still doesn't quite necessarily believe it. And it's like when we're able to have those experiences and get on the other side, like that's where that freedom is when you're like, oh, this is just what I do for the rest of my life. Like this is kind of the reality I imagined and I wanted for so long. And now that it's here, like now you just kind of have to finish getting your brain on board with like, this is my reality. This isn't just a dream anymore. This isn't just a possibility for me anymore. Like this is it. And when you think about how you want to see your body not just in the reflection, but how you want to feel in your body. Like, what does that feel like for you when you imagine maybe, and maybe you don't imagine, but if you imagine it now, like 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years out for you?
So, I mean, for one thing, I imagine similar to how I feel now, which is that alive, energized, light, joyful, vibrant feeling that I feel like is almost radiating out of every pore now. Like, I want that feeling times 10. Like, it's like addictive. Like,
It
if
is.
you think that you're addicted to chocolate cake or to wine or whatever, ice cream used to be my thing. I love ice cream. I don't know why I keep talking about cake. Ice cream was it. If you think that those things, like, I can't give that up or I'm so addicted to it, like, once you're addicted to feeling amazing in your body all the time and loving the way you look in the mirror and clothes, I mean, again, those are kind of superficial in this sense outcomes, but I just want that times 10. And I know that I can get there. Like, I know there's more work. Like, I'm not even done. Like, I feel like I've come so far, but I'm like, why stop here? Like, I could feel even more amazing. Like, there's more out there. It's like the possibilities have been blown wide open. There is no end to how far, like, not far in terms of weight loss, like I'm done with that, but it's like how much more I could get out of life. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, you're not focused on the weight loss anymore.
Yeah.
That's not, again, who cares about the ice cream or the chocolate cake when there's so much more out of
Yeah.
life?
Totally. It is. It's like, holy shit, if I can do that, like, and you see how great you can feel, you do, like, there is a limitlessness to what we're capable of. And while I use losing weight as a way to help people tap into their own, like, limitlessness, I think, like, just as humans, we create so much self-limitation for ourself. And when you're able to see, like, what you're capable of, who knows what each of us is capable of? And when you work through that first barrier of not feeling the way you wanna feel in your body, I just personally believe that if you can start to feel incredible in your body and see how powerful your mind is, like, you can only go places you could have never imagined before. Because it's just so hard to be fighting against not feeling good in your body every single day, no matter what you're trying to accomplish kind of outside of losing weight. And so it's like that energized feeling you feel physically, and then the energized feeling you feel emotionally. It just, like, puts fuel on the fire for whatever else you want to accomplish in your life. Do you have any other, like, new dreams or new possibilities or new things that you're imagining for yourself that you maybe wouldn't have even thought of maybe 6 months ago?
So I don't know if I have anything new in terms of like big stuff, but I feel like they're more possible. Like, the dreams that I had
Mhm.
or have had for a while, they feel more attainable now. So, one of the things before I got this promotion at my job and moved across the country, I was writing a book, a novel, and I put that down for a long time because I was so busy with other stuff and then I wanted to focus on this program, and now I'm at a point where I want to pick that back up, and I think that I'm going to have so much more energy and success with it because I'm approaching it in such a totally different way. Because, like I talked about before, I used willpower, not just in weight loss, but in all areas of my life. Like, we haven't even talked about, other places where you use willpower, like to exercise or to get things done at work or things done in your life or write a book. And I now know that the most lasting, sustainable change is the change that you love, that brings you the most joy. And I now approach just almost just about anything in my life, anything new that I want to do or things that I want to go back to. I'm like, do I really want to do this? Is this something I really love to do? Does it bring me joy? And if the answer is no, then I'm like, then why am I doing it?
Yeah.
Who gave me that idea? It's like when so I talked about throwing out all your diet rules, which is something I totally recommend, which has been probably one of my biggest aha moments. It's just like throw it all away. It's all garbage. But that can apply to everything in your life. Like, who said that you had to do X, Y, and Z, right? Like, who said you had to eat 1,200 calories? Who said that you had to go to law school and be a lawyer for the rest of the day? I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah.
Or in my case, who said you had to write that book or write any book? Or who said you had to work out an hour every day or eat low carbs? Or like all that every thought that we have had since we were born has been given to us by someone else, pretty
Yeah.
much. It's really hard to have an original thought in our
Yeah.
society anymore,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, you
Yes.
could take this, and maybe I sound a little bit nuts right now, but you could take this to the extreme and think about it that way and really start to unlearn all of the learning that you have done pretty much for your entire life. And so I just think the possibilities are so open, and I do want to get back to writing my book. And there are other things that I'm working on in my life, just like daily habits and routines that I am revamping or that I'm continuing to evolve that I think will underpin all of the goals that I have in my
Yeah.
life or the intentions that I want to set for
Yeah.
my life.
That's so good. I'm so glad you said that. Like, this is a thought I practice because my nature is to be a rule follower and like to want to get things right and do them perfectly and like get the A and like all the things. That's just how I've kind of been programmed, and it served me for a while in my life. And so I've really been like, okay, but what if there was no rules? Like no rules at all. Like, and when you start to like live in that question, you see how so much of how most of us live our life is some made up rule. So I got a text, an IRS notice about a filing about the classification of my business, and they made an error. Anyways, and so I was just telling my husband, who's a CPA, and I just need to respond to them with the filing that we made or whatever. And I said to him, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I won't respond. There's no rules. And he's like, no, you have to. And I was like, but what if I didn't? Like, what's the worst that would happen? Now, of course, I'm going to respond to it, but I've just been like living in this. I could like see his terror. He like had actual terror or like panic in his body. I'm like, we are just so used to believing that there are these rules. And now I'm like, there's always a consequence, a result, positive or negative, a desired result or an undesired result from the things that we do in our life. But I'm like, well, we just like collectively as humans have made up so many rules. And now so many of them are so much more arbitrary, right, than like an IRS tax notice. But I just think it would be so beneficial for everyone to just like live in a question of like, is this even a rule I want to follow? Like if this is someone else's rule that we kind of put on for our life. So I know we're getting to the end of our time together. Is there anything that's on your mind that you are thinking, if I could just have someone hear this, or if they could just understand this, like what would you want to share with someone listening, maybe in a way that you haven't shared yet, or if there's something you want to share that you want to recap, if there's a couple things or one thing that you're just like, I just want people to know this.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've talked about a lot of it, but another thing that has become kind of a mantra, even in the beginning when I first started, was I had to remind myself that I don't have to do anything. Like I could even choose to stay at the weight that I was at the time and feel not as good in my body. I could take no action. So every time during the program, chose to do something, it was my choice. I get to do this. I want to do this. You don't have to do it. And I think that's, again, the years of dieting mentality where you're told by other people what you have to do and it feels forced. And then you feel deprived and restricted. And so I think that this process really teaches you to love the choices that you are making, and you don't have to do any of it. You could just choose not to. So in that sense, what do you have to lose? And going back to like the fear and the very beginning, like what wouldn't you give to be naturally thin for life? This was another thing that I thought about, especially when I thought about the commitment and the financial investment. And I was like, I don't know. But if you knew with 100% certainty that this would work, and I'm telling you with 100% certainty it'll work, But if you knew you could be naturally thin for life, what wouldn't you give? And I thought about it that way. Like, even if there was, and let's say it wasn't a 100% chance, what if it was a 10% chance or something small? It's still worth the risk because the gains are infinite. It's like you try to do that return on investment and it's like infinity. It's like you're trying to do some kind of math that doesn't compute, right? So
Yeah.
there's no reason not to. Like, it just, if you're trying to be skeptical or you're trying to be, say, I'm afraid or I don't know or I'm not sure or this can't possibly work, you just have to try it and keep going and you'll find out. It's amazing.
Is there anything you would tell your past self? And then we'll end with this. And then is there anything that your future self would maybe say to you today?
First of all, I'm very thankful to my past self. I've been doing a lot of past self reflection and like inner child work and therapy and all the things. So I have to remind myself not to be too hard on my past self. Like, I love her and I'm grateful for all the things she went through and she's brought me to this place. But what I would tell her is probably to have hope and not give up and not think that where she was at that time was it. Because there were so many times when I thought, well, this is it. Like, I'm just going to calorie count for the rest of my life, or I'm just going to be overweight for the rest of my life and not love my body for the rest of my life. And all these things, like, we just, again, sell ourselves short because these are all thoughts that we can choose to think or not think. And so I guess I would just tell her to keep going because she eventually gets to me and I love where I'm at now. And then my future self, I mean, I think she would have almost the same advice because even though I'm in a fantastic place right now, like we talked about before, I think my future self is going to be even more amazing. Like, I think I'm pretty amazing now. And I'm like, it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
I don't even think, I know I told my therapist recently, I'm like, I feel like I've arrived. Like, you have these points in your life where you're like, everything's good.
Yeah.
And I think my future self will be like, oh, you thought that was good? This is good. And this is, and it's like every 5-10 years, you're going to look back and be like, no, honey, like, this is amazing. Right. So I just have like almost unlimited hope for the future and my future self. So I think that if I just keep going with everything you've taught me, I will be in a fantastic place.
Yeah. I think about that for myself too. Like, I'm so grateful to my past self for everything she did to like set me up for where I am now. And I think about myself in 10 years, it's like the same. She's like, I'm so grateful for everything you did to set me up for where I am now, which is so fascinating that it's kind of like a similar mental conversation. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing your perspective, and helping people see truly that it's possible for them. And not only is it possible for them, but it can be so much closer to their reality than they might be thinking right now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Friend, if you are loving what you are learning here on the podcast, you have to come check out my Naturally Thin for Life program. It is my on-demand lifetime access program where I teach you brand new concepts not taught here on the podcast. And I will walk you through exactly how to implement all of the tools I teach you here so that they become just a part of you. You will learn exactly how to understand your specific brain and your specific body so that you become naturally thin for the rest of your life and you no longer struggle with your weight. Inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program, you can also receive live help so that you consistently make progress and reach your goal. I will teach you how to accelerate your naturally thin journey in a sustainable way so that the change becomes permanent. The best part is that it's risk-free. You either love it or I will give you your money back. If you are ready to finally be naturally thin for life, join us at lauradixoncoaching.com/work with me. That's LAURADIXON coaching.com and click on the Work With Me tab. I cannot wait to see you there.